Warm, pleasant good morning, Benjamin, Chief Justice of Belize, His Worship, Mayor Darrell Bradley, Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of the Business, the University of the West Indies, participants all, welcome to join us and offer prayers of thanks. Head of Site, Mrs. Jane Bennett, to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. Beautiful morning, isn't it? Well, for a lot of us. It is indeed my pleasure, honor, and duty to launch the Belize Country Conference 2016 under the theme of Leadership for Sustainability. When the call for papers went out for this conference, we cited definitions, perspectives, and language that made it very clear what the expectations are for the presentations and dialogue for this conference. I would like to refer to and reiterate them this morning, and some of them are Leadership for Sustainability, Innovative, Engagement, Development, Agile, and Resilient. The social construct of sustainability leadership has now been added to the 100 adjectives of leadership that describes individual intentions, outcomes, and behaviors. Leadership for sustainability requires leaders of extraordinary abilities. These are leaders who can read and predict through complexity, think through complex problems, engage groups in dynamic, adaptive organizational change, and have the emotional intelligence to adaptively engage with their own emotions associated with complex problem solving, Metcalfe and Benin 2013. The University of the West Indies Open Campus Belize, in collaboration with the Cavehill School of Business, Barbados, under the guidance of our Vice Chancellor and Principal of the Open Campus, Dr. Luz Luxworth, decided that this was indeed a timely topic to discuss and derive solutions for sustainable development of the Caribbean region. It is a prime opportunity to examine and discuss the Belize context for this. I invite you this morning, one and all, to listen keenly to the messages that will be brought to you by our panelists and presenters over the next couple of days. It is exceedingly important that you reflect and be engaged in this opportunity, and that you ask as many questions and get as many answers as you can. Let us make these next 2 days matter. Let us call forth our individual and collective wisdom, knowledge, experience, and aspirations to make this a conference like no other, with the follow-up actions that say we mean business about our leadership for sustainability in our country of Belize. Much appreciation and respect is due and hereby given to those at the head table, to our panelists and our presenters whose expertise and passion and energy will make this conference a meaningful success. Of course, the participants are also key in this. There could be no success without your presence and participation. Have a wonderful 2 days and enjoy our campus here and what we have put together for you. And I will say protocol was established, and so I went on with my speech. That's me. Thank you.
Good morning. Befitting its stature as the Caribbean's premier educational institution, the University of the West Indies once again takes a leadership role in being the convener of eminent persons to gather together for discussions that will shape our times and the future. I want to thank the university for embracing this role and for directing public attention in Belize to areas of focus that are critical to our national development. I also want to thank the university for having an inclusionary approach in hosting conferences and conversations that not only embrace the academic side of topical issues, but that also bring a practical dimension by engaging discussions with the common man and woman, allowing them to see themselves as an integral part of building sustainability. As a person engaged in leadership myself, it is my fundamental belief that most, if not all, of our developmental challenges stem from issues of capacity, strategic visioning, planning, resource mobilization, proper implementation, and leveraging the all-important power of human capital. These are all questions of leadership, or these contain a leadership dimension. So much can be garnered from sitting together and focusing on the leadership question, examining how we create systems and structures that engender a culture of empowerment among our people, so that they feel engaged and equipped to be transformers and changers of their own realities. This, of course, is a broad topic covering issues of child rearing, dealing with issues of poverty, reshaping the education system to really take its place as the vehicle for social change, transforming the culture of politicians and public servants from being one of exercising power to being one of empowering others in the decision-making process, and also to ensure that policies of state are sensible and are implemented through practical programs that have citizen engagement as a core feature. I am excited about this conference, and I believe that your gathering can be a catalyst for great change within our community, bringing together a wide cross-section of local and regional experts, policymakers, politicians, and community actors who can lend their voices to the question of how to create sustainability through empowering people. I hope that you each embrace this opportunity and see great value in this conference, and that you use this time to share your experiences and knowledge and to listen and learn from others. I extend again warmest welcome and best wishes on a most successful conference. Thank you.
Dr. Ann Wallace, Program Director of Cavehill School of Business, to join us for brief remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Saunders. Your Lordship, Kenneth Benjamin, Chief Justice of Belize, Honorable Patrick Faber, Acting Prime Minister of Belize, and Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Education, Youth, Sport, and Culture, Your Worship, Mayor Darrell Bradley, Mayor of Belize City, Professor Dale Weber, Pro Vice Chancellor, Graduate Studies at Mona Campus, distinguished panelists and presenters, conference participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to have been invited to bring remarks from the Cavehill School of Business, UWI in Barbados. I join the previous speakers in welcoming you to this conference that, given what you've heard already so far, is timely. The Cavehill School of Business is one of 3 business schools of the University of the West Indies, where our mandate since 1992 has been fostering leadership through education, primarily to business professionals in the Caribbean. Situated as we are in the deep blue Atlantic Ocean, the imperatives for sustainability are never far from our collective consciousness. Therefore, as we continue to develop the leaders of our businesses, governments, and societies, the infusion of the concept of sustainability in our conversations, in our training sessions, our education programs, our outreach and consulting initiatives is paramount. Sustainability means many things to many people. It even means different things to different people. What we do know, I believe, is that it must apply to the development of our human resources, our health and wellness practices, our macro and microeconomics policies, our productivity and our production elements, as well as how we simultaneously use and preserve our environment. The list is endless. The decisions made by leaders in every sphere of endeavor have an impact on our sustainability. Those decisions are based in part on the rapid changes and challenges that take place in our environment, thereby making the definition of sustainability fluid. In a forum such as this, I am sure it will resonate positively when I say that education must be informed by the world in which we live. Our world, as I'm sure you will realize, seems to change with every breaking newscast. So the definition of sustainability morphs, whether it is how to protect ourselves after natural disaster, like Tropical Storm Earl or Hurricane Matthew, or to shield our youths from a new dance craze. And yes, culture is involved in sustainability, or sustainability is involved in culture. We must preserve our cultural heritage. In culture, sustainability could mean blending what we have and cherish with what others have and cherish. When we hear Beyonce and Drake include words like the bumper in their lyrics, we know that cultural penetration is not just one way. It also signals that we can become sustainable when we appreciate others. What we must be mindful of is that in trying to foster sustainability, we do not dismiss modernity and diversity, that we do not ignore that change is a valuable commodity to be used to our benefit, and that creativity and innovation must permeate our thinking to the point of being a way of life. The antithesis of growth and development is the same old, comfortably replicating what we have been doing because it is what we know. The Cavehill School of Business is at the vanguard of leadership and change. We pride ourselves in providing thought leadership of igniting change in the mindset of people and in the DNA of organizations. We believe that it is only through that kind of blue ocean strategy of looking at things that a completely different perspective will be achieved. The dynamism of leadership styles and practices and the myriad forms of sustainability need to be explored regularly. This conference, we believe, is the first step in the right direction where leadership for sustainability takes center stage, because it must. Ladies and gentlemen, although it is only day one, and certainly not in the happy hour of thank you, I take this opportunity on behalf of my colleagues in Barbados, Marjorie Wharton and Georgia Innes, to thank our colleagues here at the Open Campus Belize, our eyes and ears on the ground, for the excellent collaboration in bringing this conference to fruition. I wish you an enjoyable and informative period of deliberations. Thank you.
Acknowledge His Lordship, the Chief Justice of Belize, and also those at the head table. Even though the protocol has been established, I'd like to mention those at the head table, beginning, of course, with Pro Vice Chancellor Luz Longsworth, who is no stranger to Belize, as you know, and I'll get back to making some other comments about why I'm so happy to welcome her as we move along. Let me also welcome Pro Vice Chancellor Weber, who is our keynote speaker for today, and who I'm told as well is means that some seeds have been. I'm sorry, Mayor. and of course Ms. Jane. I also see many of the distinguished panelists who are in our little brochure who will be. I think the mayor did a great job at putting forward Belize's position, but I'd like to place on record our gratitude to the two persons who are on this stage as well, and that is Ms. Jane and Dr. Saunders, because in my time as Minister of Education, these have been the two persons who, on every occasion, they've met me, they've requested, they've demanded that in fact the University of the West Indies play a more prominent role in Belize's development. And I think that over the last couple of years, particularly since Ms. Jane Bennett has become the resident tutor, and certainly since the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Luz Longsworth, who is the principal of the Open Campus as well, has gotten to that position, Belize has risen to the occasion. The Open Campus here, certainly, the representation here has risen to the occasion, and in fact has blossomed in terms of playing a more dynamic role in Belize's development. And if ever there is an example that they've gotten it, it is this conference, or a conference like this. So I thank, you see, Ms. Jane, we need to continue to work like me on that doctorate. I hope you haven't given up like me. When I say like me, I haven't given up, so I'm hoping you haven't given up either. I want to thank these ladies because they have pushed that agenda. Dr. Saunders in particular, who has been a long-standing member of the University of Belize's board. And I wish to say for the record that there is no conflict, there is no competition in terms of us having a national university and having been a contributing member country for so long to the University of the West Indies. In fact, the synergy between the two entities is now stronger than ever, and I'd like to credit Dr. Saunders and Ms. Jane for that as well. I see some of our UB deans here, Dr. Palacio and Dr. Watler. They're in the audience this morning, and I hope that that is testimony to what I've just said. My friends, the University of the West Indies gets it. This conference that is focusing on leadership in sustainability is exactly what Belize needs. And in fact, when it is one of our partners, and I hate to say, because the University of the West Indies, for me and should be for all Belizeans, not an outside partner, and maybe it is nailed home even closer when our Pro-Vice Chancellor is so dear, a member of our Belizean family. But they get it. They know that this is what needs to be done if they are to be relevant and if they are to make the kinds of contributions that Belize needs, and indeed the region needs, and the University of the West Indies needs to establish. They get it. Now, my task this morning is to ask Belizeans present here, but also who might get a glimpse of what is happening in this conference via the media or via some other mechanism. Maybe you will go and present back to your relevant institutions. But I'm hoping that Belizeans get it. That in fact the content that will be presented by so many of our local panelists, as well as our panelists that have come from abroad, indeed our keynote speaker, that we need to embrace this, that we need to embrace the words of Mayor Bradley this morning, who says and accurately described the culture of Belize to be one that needs planning, that needs systems, because I'll tell you, I maybe am the fitting person to say it, but there is a serious issue of us following systems and following plans, putting in place mechanisms for sustainability, and in fact, putting in place mechanisms to nurture and to develop the kind of leadership that this country will need in the future. That is something that is very much needed. And so, while there is no question this morning that the University of the West Indies gets it, I am hoping that our nation, the wider population, all those who are concerned, but especially those who are engaged in leadership, get the same idea, get it in a similar manner, that we need this kind of planning, we need this kind of leadership training in this country. And I see some of the key folks here. See our friends from the Small Business Development Center. Key. I spoke this morning to one of the panelists, Dr. Gibson, who is here from Texas. Is it Dr. Gibson? And Dr. Gibson, is that you? Yes, all right. I'm talking to Dr. Gibson, or Dr. Gibson doesn't give me any response. I'm wondering if I'm calling the wrong name. But the areas that will be presented on are right on target. As I look at the lineup, and I won't waste your time, you can read the lineup. You know what I'm talking about. You may know the lineup much better than I do. And I really am very regretful that I'm not able to stay for some of these sessions. The agenda is very, very full, as you may have heard. But I am hoping that those who are among the grouping, both as presenters and as those who are contributing as listeners and students even, understand that there is something to get, and I'm hoping that we get it. If not today, we get it soon, because Belize's development is absolutely dependent on us getting it. My friends, I wish to, on your behalf, the people of Belize, close by offering, of course, gratitude to the University of the West Indies for getting it. Not for getting it, but for getting it. And of course, we wish to place on record as well how happy we are to welcome you to beautiful Belize. In your case, Dr. Luz, we welcome you home. And we thank you for placing Belize high on your agenda. We won't tell anybody that you have that bias to Belize. I won't say that publicly. But we thank you, and we welcome our other visitors, especially from the region. But another thing to show that they get it, Dr. Gibson, I was mentioning, is from the United States. We have guests from the Caribbean region, suspecting we have guests from Central America as well. And Norway, as far as Norway. So you see, we're global. They get it. And if we are to survive in what is to come in the future, this is very, very much necessary. So I thank you for coming, and I welcome you to Belize, and I wish this gathering of folks for this conference all the success possible in the world, so that we can move forward with the work of developing our beautiful Belize. I thank you.
My pleasure to call on our Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal, no stranger to us, Dr. Luz Longsworth, to deliver special remarks.
I know that the protocol has been established, and one of the things that irks me often as an audience member is the constant listing of the protocol. However, in fact, that is the protocol. And so I ask that you really bear with me, because there are some people that I must acknowledge. And I want to start by acknowledging our Chief Justice, His Lordship Kenneth Benjamin, and not just because he comes on the top of the protocol list, but because he is a supporter of such activities all the time. I do know that he supports the University of the West Indies activities, and I want to thank you for always being here for us. our acting Prime Minister, Minister of so many things, education, youth, sports, and culture. Another supporter of the University of the West Indies. And Minister, I want to thank you for your comments and for your encouragement of the activities that we are seeking to put on here at the Open Campus in Belize. His Worship Mayor Darrell Bradley, more than a mayor, a friend, again another supporter, and an alumnus of the University of the West Indies, of whom we are tremendously proud. I sound a little bit biblical there, but because, you know, it is good when you are old enough to see students turn into your bosses, you know. So I want to welcome him and to thank him. Professor Weber, our keynote speaker, a dear friend, again, someone that I met when he was a PhD student, and here we are as colleagues, and I want to welcome him to his favorite country, which he won't tell people, but we know that that is the truth. Dr. Wallace, you know, Minister, you might not know that she has been here quite a lot, you know, but she has been very quietly becoming Belizean over the last 13 years. Of course, I want to also make a special mention of His Excellency Ambassador Gutierrez. Ambassador is actually one of the persons who has gotten me into a lot of hot water, having pulled me aside at a CARICOM meeting. And during that meeting, I was introduced to some wonderful people who I also need to add to the protocol list here. And those wonderful people are all sitting in a row. I want to thank Dr. Ellen Oftedal of the University of the Arctic in Norway, and bearing with me over the last few months as we all came together in, that is the longest part of the speech, Mrs. Bennett, dear, which is what this was a year ago when we were here at UWI Open Campus, and we threw a lot of ideas around and spoke about sustainability. And we saw Belize as they took the idea, they've run with it, and I also want to thank them and congratulate them for putting it all together. The program looks exciting. I hope that we're able to reach many, many Belizeans as we move forward with the 2 days of exchange. You're going to hear a lot about leadership, and the disadvantage of coming at this point where they have me as special remarks is that I really don't know what to say, because everything has been said before I came, and if I go too much further, I probably will start encroaching on Professor Weber's keynote address. But I want to say that leadership is a very simple thing. It's all about influence. It's not about position. It's not about election, no matter what you saw last night. It's about how you influence people to do the right thing. Leadership, as they say, everything rises and falls on leadership. And similarly, sustainability is more, especially now in the context of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, it's more than environment. It's more than climate change. It's about our lives. It's about our survival. It is about what we are going to leave as patrimony, or I was going to say matrimony, but that is not quite the right word. It is what we leave for our children and our grandchildren. It is our imperative to sit and speak about these things. And an academic conference can frighten people sometimes. And I want the people of Belize to not be frightened about this academic conference, because academics can have no effect if they speak to themselves. Academics have to speak to other people, and I implore the persons who are presenting to speak in a way that the ordinary person who is extraordinary, because they are the leaders that have to implement what we academics think up. They are the people who have to make it work. Minister, they are the people who have to get it. as you rightly said. And so I'm very pleased that we're able to bring together the academic community, the business community, the entrepreneurial community, the people of Belize. And you know, Minister says you won't let people know that, you know, there's a little bias for Belize now that I'm principal of the Open Campus. I oversee 17 countries. It is a very busy job. And recently, I have also been put in charge of overseeing the newly formed State University of New York, UWI Center for Leadership and Sustainability. And we are perhaps the first conference in the region addressing that topic. So Belize is already at the forefront of this discourse, and I am inordinately proud, and I will not hide my bias in that way. But what I would say in closing is that as a region, and given all of the things that have been happening internationally, the Brexit, the elections that have gone in unusual ways, we must now realize that as a region, we have to work together. We have to be the strength for each other. There is no one that has more invested in this region than the people of this region. And we have to stand together to make sure that we can move forward, we can succeed, we can develop a sustainable livelihood for our children and grandchildren. I now live in Barbados, as some of you know, and the theme that has been chosen for many of the sports teams for the University of the West Indies is one that I want to leave you with when we are looking at Belize as being a catalyst for this discourse. And the theme that they use is one flies, all soar. Let us fly here in Belize over the next 2 days so that our region can soar and lead in showing the world how we can ensure a sustainable future for the generations to come. Thank you.
It is now indeed our pleasure to have We Save the Best for Last. I'd like to ask Mrs. Jane Bennett to introduce our keynote speaker, and thereafter we'll have the keynote address.
Dale Weber, who was appointed as Pro Vice Chancellor, Graduate Studies, August 1st, 2015, and Pro Vice Chancellor Research, October 1, 2015. Until that appointment, the holder of the Grace Kennedy Foundation Endowed Chair in Environmental Management. Professor Weber has had a distinguished career in research, teaching, and administration. He has produced 5 book chapters and 35 publications in peer-reviewed journals, attracted approximately US $2.5 million in research grants, and has supervised 21 Master of Science, 27 Masters in, an MPhil, 27 MPhil and 14 PhD students, 62 in total, to successfully complete over the past 20 years. Professor Weber has been head of life science.
Thank you, Jane. Acting Prime Minister, I see the mayor has slipped out and I was going to say something special to him and the Chief Justice, but I will say it still because you have the right persons. Members of the head table, I will go with all protocols having been observed and say, yes, Acting Prime Minister, we get it, but the fact that you are here and that so many leaders, and I'm going to talk about leaders in a second, are here means you get it too, and that's important. When I was asked to do this keynote, of course, you can say I was asked, or you can say my arm was twisted, or you can say... I said yes without thinking about it twice. Why? Because yes, Belize is a special place for me. Why? When I started my academic career, my first thought is, for me to be effective within the Caribbean, I must reach out to the entire Caribbean. I can't sit in Jamaica and have an impact in the Caribbean. You've heard about my graduate students. I call that my little factory. But if I were to break down those graduate students, it was my goal to have a graduate student from every Caribbean territory go back to that Caribbean territory with a master's or a PhD to influence the thought process in that Caribbean territory. Belize was the first country that I was able to achieve that, hence the warmth I have for Belize. So it was fun to come here and go out to the Great Barrier Reef and dive with my student. She did her research here. I went out, did the work there with her, and I've had 3 graduate students complete their degrees here. And the one that really stands out for me is Leandra Cho, who is now one of my best graduate students. But let me start at the very beginning, because I've been asked to talk about leadership for sustainability. And you can have many definitions of leadership. We've heard at least 2 already so far. You can think of leadership as the ability to understand and utilize what you have around you. You can think of leadership as building teamwork. You can think of leadership as being humble enough to accept advice so you can move through the various challenges that you have. My thought on leadership, having served so that I could lead, is leadership means taking responsibility for all actions, past, present, and future. Taking responsibility for all actions. The definition for sustainability is also one that you need to put on the table. And I suppose the best one that people might know is from the Brundtland Report 1987, which says, meeting the needs of present generation without compromising the ability of future generations. What the UN calls intergenerational equity. And by the way, a generation has changed. When it was written, intergenerational equity meant so your grandchildren benefit from what you've done or aren't negatively influenced by what you've done. Intergenerational equity now spans 7 generations. So you need to plan long, long, long in advance. And that for me resonates. I have 2 daughters, and both of them have decided they want to do something in the environment. I don't know why. I tell them there's no money, but they're still doing it. I could not face my daughters having seen the Caribbean go through all its environmental nightmares. They're going to say, but Daddy, weren't you some environmental big something or another? So I have to do what I can do. And I'm imploring you all to do what you can do. The definition of sustainability, however, allows us to think about what populations have done. Think about it in any way you wish. If you're a banker, think about the earth as capital. If you are an engineer, think about it as a bridge. Depending on how your mindset begins, you can think of whatever you have for sustainability as your frame of reference, and you can take it from there. There are, however, some constructs when it comes to sustainability, and there are usually 3 key parts: economic, social, and environmental. That 3 parts component works together, and if you want to turn it the other way, you can say it is really people, planet, and profits, as said by John Elkins. The society depends on the economy, and the economy depends on the ecosystems that we have, and the health of the ecosystem depends on what we do, and that's the bottom line. So, sustainable leadership really embraces those 3 things that we put together. The definition is therefore mindful of the actions we take, the behaviors we have, embracing a global view of the world, recognizing the connection between planet and humanity, thereby allowing personal and organizational choices which can make a difference in environment and social change. If you think about economic vulnerability, the Caribbean is a very vulnerable area because of exposure to natural disasters, economic structure, high levels of debt and debt servicing, regional competition, lack of significant diversification beyond agricultural production, which is where we all started, and tourism, and overdependence on external trade, that puts us at risk. The challenge that we have is to harmonize or synchronize the individual sectors that I've just mentioned into a holistic feature. There must be overlap. In fact, we urge overlap because that's how you get joined up government and that's how you're going to solve some of the problems. However, we have not engaged the private sector enough. And that's what I'm hoping this conference will be able to do. Because public-private partnerships are the only way to get all sides of this dimension involved. The lack of disaster management legislation, especially in some countries, and I know that having looked at the Belize website, there is an issue here. This would ensure coordination of mitigation across various sectors if we did it through legislation. And I know, Acting Prime Minister, you can put that one on your agenda for next cycle. The UN Millennium Development Goals was the template that we had used. And while it was valuable in promoting the gains of poverty reduction, health, education, etc., we have been able to replace this with the 2015 onwards, the Sustainable Development Goals, which goes beyond improving the welfare of citizens. It now asks us to meet the basic needs, enhancing access to primary services, which will be better for all. The broader scope of the SDGs is particularly important in the Caribbean. Despite its middle income status and moderate to high human development classification, take out Haiti of course, the region has experienced poor growth. The region should benefit from the new goals in that amongst the objectives we have directly strengthening economic performance and promoting beneficial engagement with the global economy. Despite the region's generally low economic growth, performance over the last 4 decades of all Caribbean countries, again take out Haiti, classified by the World Bank as high or middle income, which changes your ability to find funding. Most countries in the middle income grouping are classified as upper middle income, and top of the list is Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Jamaica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Suriname. That puts you in a category, puts us in a category, which means you can only apply for some types of aid. 5 countries are classified as high income: Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Trinidad and Tobago, which takes them out of the ballpark completely. But we have a responsibility to work with our partners. And I'm going to put it to you that as you look at your sustainable objectives, involve those who now, according to the World Bank, fall off the radar, but by virtue of being part of the University of the West Indies, we can all still benefit. All soar. You must have been looking at my notes. In doing the research to speak with you today, I found some interesting statistics which I thought I would share as I went through. The Human Development Index is often used as an important feature of what a country is doing. But there are some other indices. I looked at the agriculture as a percentage of GDP, and Belize ranks 3rd in the Caribbean. 15.3% of your GDP comes from agriculture. I thought it would have been more. Industry, you rank 6th in the Caribbean. Services, you rank 10th. Exports, you rank 3rd. And imports, you rank 2nd. Which means Belize has opportunities for investments, for innovation, for agriculture, industry. You have great opportunities for diversification, which is one sure way to move you out of debt. The high level of accumulated debt through the region is a consequence of our financing through current debt-stricken issues. Deficits are a symptom of the region's lack of competitiveness and the fiscal imbalances that we find throughout the region. From 2013 data, 9 Caribbean countries, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica, St. Lucia, Belize, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Barbados, Grenada, and Jamaica, all had a debt-to-GDP ratio that exceeded the accepted critical threshold of 60%. And many rank way, way, way higher than that. For instance, Jamaica has a debt-to-GDP of 143. Belize, for your record, is 76. but it's still over the 60. 60 is that threshold where debt is just stifling your ability to grow. Sustainability cannot be had when growth does not exist. We need to remove the debt or get that ratio to a point where you can get sustainable. It's hard to tell a man who's hungry that he can't eat. As Gandhi said, to a man who is hungry, food is God. We need to move from debt to prosperity. A major challenge for the Caribbean, therefore, is increasing the external resources for development and international aid and assistance that has not been receptive to our special conditions, or our peculiar conditions, as some say. We have structural, geographic, and environmental vulnerabilities, and we're now lagging in economic performance throughout the entire Caribbean. The capacity to maintain the gains of the past and transform the lives, which is what we need to move forward, needs to be addressed. I'm suggesting that we use the SDG paradigm to move us forward as a timely catalyst for national, regional, and international action. So we need to finance our way forward. Shortage of capital and lack of access to acceptable financing is our problem. We need to get over that hurdle. Limited funding for training, particularly for personnel within the government departments, another big hurdle. And the availability of finances to support green initiatives, another big problem. The solutions I'm offering, in terms of capital, public-private partnerships have to be engaged to get us past that capital. It has to be seen as an investment in the country and in the people. Limited training, especially for government, in terms of government employees. The University of the West Indies stands with all Caribbean countries to offer that. In fact, we have been able to increase scholarships for all graduate programs by 50% this year, meaning anyone who wants to do a master's or a PhD with a first-class honors degree will get a scholarship. We need to continue doing that so that those persons who have the highest undergrad degree can move forward. Furthermore, we see the Open Campus as the avenue through which we will be able to increase access. The university cannot grow using the landed campuses. It is only through the Open Campus that we'll be able to get the numbers that we wish. Therefore, Belize, being one of those countries that will lead on this, we want you to be able to stay right here and do a PhD in environmental management. We want you to stay right here and do a PhD in accounting. As you therefore stay within your job, within the government or the private sector, you will be able to advance yourself. Tertiary education is the catalyst to move us through some of the issues that we have. And finally, green initiatives. As we look at the green initiatives, we need to convince government, private sector, but most importantly, people on the ground, that getting green initiatives are pivotal. They should not be seen as hanging out there. They should not be seen as something to be aspired to, and you'll get there in 20 years. They are the alternative, and they are the now. They must be seen as an alternative track which gives you benefits now in small amounts, but tremendous benefits in the long run. Then you will see how quickly people come on board. Education and public awareness is an important part of moving forward. Lack of educational materials to aid public awareness is something that we all have to work on. We need to distribute the information we have in such a way that the public can absorb it. As I said earlier, we don't want to be lecturing in a way that people look at it and say, well, this is not for me. As we talk about sustainability, sustainability is for everybody. There's need for assistance in training, data collection, data analysis, and management. To make the right decisions, you must have the right information. And I'm going to put it to you that a country such as Belize, with endless resources, should be capturing data daily in every way possible. You have the second largest barrier reef in the world. Do you know how many countries would die to have this resource? I worked on a project with a colleague, and the specimen that was being worked on grew on a mangrove root. I passed so many mangroves right at the turn here, Do you know how many countries I've been to where you have to travel miles to find a mangrove plant? You have it right here. On that mangrove root was a small ascidian. It's about the size of one finger joint. It's called Echinacea turbinata, but I'll throw away the terminology. But remember that name, Echinacea turbinata. Why is it going to be important? Well, we were asked, and this is why, the connection goes back so far. We were asked in Jamaica to allow a group from University of Illinois or somewhere to come and collect as much Echinacea turbinata as they could. We said, okay, fine. They said they would pay 20 US per ounce for it. No, 20 US an ounce. Probably, the only thing that I know that's sold for 20 US an ounce is usually white and powdery. So we got very suspicious and said, no, let's make the call. So I called my colleagues in Belize and said, have you got this request? And they said, yes, they did. Thank goodness Belize had a natural protection policy which prevented people from coming and just collecting. We called a few other countries. Have you had this request? Yes. Called colleagues in Florida. They said, yes. They came and they stripped everything out. Okay. So we told them, okay, we will collect on your behalf. 20 US an ounce was very attractive. And we will send you packages of it. So we reaped in a sustainable manner, and we gave them some to work on. A year or two passed by, and then suddenly they stopped. They didn't want it anymore. Of course, we wanted more $20 per ounce. So we called them and said, hello, you don't want any more of the $20 per ounce material? We have some growing. Because by now we had learned how to reap it sustainably. We actually had graduate students doing this, collecting, and doing their own research. They just said, no, we're good, thank you. You've been very helpful. Couldn't figure out why. A year and a half later, we saw on the international web system that this same University of Illinois was doing a test for a drug that could stop the growth of some cancerous cells. Would you like to guess the name of the drug? It was called ectinacidin. It was the extract from that same tunicate which grew on the mangrove roots. Do you know where that ectinacidin grows most in the Caribbean? Jamaica and Belize. I raise that because how many natural resources exist within this country that we know not the potential of? Pharmaceuticals. We don't know the untapped resources. But we do need to have education. Stories like I just told you are stories that will change the mind of many people. We need to have it known. Public awareness is our greatest benefit. The Caribbean has made some substantial gains in terms of education over the last 50 years or so, but we still need to make some more. And it troubles me that as I look at the entry, because the university is going into its new strategic plan, access, we must give more people access. Agility, we must respond more quickly and be able to respond in the right way. And alignment, we must satisfy the needs of governments of the Caribbean and the peoples of the Caribbean, as well as the private sector. The private sector shouldn't have to build a research lab enough. They should come to the university and say, I would like this research, and we'll say, yes, bring it on. We should be able to do it for half the cost that they would build their own lab. The government would like something done, we should be able to respond. Being agile to say, yes, Prime Minister, you want that done, here's how we will do it. We will send a team over. We're on the verge of doing that now. We're working through various things within the university, through the Vice Chancellor, and we will get it done. However, as we increase access, what worries us is the intake. The years that we've looked at in terms of data tells us that we have spent some money on education, but have we spent it in the best possible way? The Caribbean is adjudged to have met its goal of universal primary education since the beginning of the millennium, with high net enrollment rates exceeding 90%. So clearly we are doing well. However, the World Bank has drawn attention to major issues in Caribbean education in terms of pass rates on core subjects of math and English. Less than 50% pass is not good enough. 2 decades ago, the World Bank Task Force on Caribbean Education in regard to secondary education said that the analysis of 20% of students taking science subjects and 15% of those taking foreign languages and 10 taking food and nutrition was the maximum that was being attained, and that was not sufficient. In Belize, 57% of students over the last 3 years have passed general mathematics examination. In Barbados, it's 48%. In Suriname, it's only 23%. In Jamaica and Guyana, it's 36 and 31%. That means if we're going to take these students, increasing our access to the university so that we can get the information out, that is sustainable information and sustainable growth, we're going to have to do something at that level. And I just had communication from a colleague, the principal of the St. Augustine campus. We were asking about what we could do for math. And there's a paper that shows that math is linked to English. If you cannot communicate that which is to be learned in the discipline, then how are you going to communicate the content of the discipline and have them receive it? So I'm putting it to you that education is a major part. Education in terms of dissemination, but education in terms of foundation that we're going to move forward with. Human resources. The human resources are a major part of making sustainability work. And leaders need to recognize that the human resource of the Caribbean is in fact the greatest resource that we have. People think it's the environment, but the environment is important. In fact, my discipline is environmental management, and I start each lecture with telling people the environment left on its own would do absolutely fine. It has for many, many years. Environmental management is not about managing the environment, it's about managing the human impact on the environment. So it's a human resource that we need to look at. We need a more holistic and balanced approach to national, regional, and global levels of human resource management. It's possible that this holistic framework can be advanced in our 2015 Sustainable Development Agenda. Again, there are discrete items which speak to this. Looking at data that I have in terms of cross-Caribbean indices, for Belize, the percentage of population below the poverty line is 41%, which is one of the highest in the Caribbean. The unemployment rate, 23%. The youth unemployment rate, couldn't find any data on that. Homelessness, 0.2%. And then it goes on with homicides, etc. But it is clear that at one end of the spectrum, Belize is doing very well. That is, prisoners, homicides, and gender inequality seems to be good. But on the side of poverty and unemployment, it seems to be bad. So we need to find a way to employ more persons. I'm so glad that I met Dave this morning, and I'm looking forward to working with him and talking with him some more. Innovation for entrepreneurial possibilities becomes wonderful when you have such a large resource, natural, and a large resource, human. Belize has a lot of the things lined up. We just need to make them go to work. I gather that tourism and agriculture are the mainstay of Belize. Both need to have sustainable approaches brought to them. It's pointless offering sun, sea, and sand when you only have this much sand and this much sea, and, well, we don't even know about the sun based on the rains. And as climate change, sigh. How many persons have that on their agenda? How is that marketed? I've already mentioned your barrier reefs, and there's a lot that we should be doing there. So agriculture and tourism both need to have a sustainable slant taken to them, because food and food security is one of the primary issues when you tie back to poverty alleviation. Food security is going to be an important part of determining whether sustainability can work for a country. Achieving more with less has to be your way forward. So we need to get more industry aligned with more of our agriculture. Energy is the penultimate one I want to touch on, because the high cost of energy cripples investments. Now, I know Belize has fossil fuels. I don't know how much is being extracted. I don't know how much you actually get to keep and what fraction of the investment is for the country. But it sounds to me like we need to talk more about some of the alternative energies. We need renewable energies to be at least 25% of the energy component. Why? apart from making you more self-sufficient and less fragile to the global economic shocks, it'll also give you more money back in your pockets. It'll give you more that you can spend on some of the other features that you would like. Given the importance of energy to modern daily life, it is therefore pivotal that we move to renewable energy. It represents less than 3% of the Caribbean's total electricity now, and diversification into a mix, wind, solar, biomass, hydro, should be the way to go. Gender equality or inequality is also an issue. Integrating gender equality into all aspects of all we do will guarantee greater sustainability. It's essential in an equitable and a sustainable future because policies and measures and actions in regard of gender include and go beyond just a commitment to national instruments. It must respond to comprehensive and directly socio-economic realities. Recently, we conducted a study throughout the entire Caribbean looking at the websites for development of all the Caribbean countries so that the University of the West Indies could plan its research to respond in our alignments. The top 3 issues were economy, socio issues, and environment, built and natural. All 3 are pertinent in the Belize of today. And gender equality is going to help us tackle all 3. If you can tackle the gender issue and mainstream that throughout economics, social, and environmental, you would have solved your issues with crime, you'd have solved many of the other issues that spin off thereafter. The final thing I want to touch on, of course, is climate change and environmental vulnerability. Between 1990 and 2014, 328 natural disasters were recorded in the Caribbean. That's a lot. That's about 12, 13 per year. 15% of the disasters recorded in the Americas were in the Caribbean, which is home to only 1.8% of the hemisphere's population. Over a 25-year period, disasters in the region claimed more than 240,000 lives and has cost over $39 billion US. This indicates why the UN and the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, amongst others, have articulated that the Caribbean is amongst the most vulnerable to climate change. SIDS in general, Caribbean in particular. In fact, we're hosting the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change at the regional headquarters of the university. First time they're coming to the Caribbean, by the way. We're hosting them at the regional headquarters of the university at the end of November, and we hope to showcase what we have been doing in the Caribbean and also what our vulnerabilities are so that we can start to influence the decision making. I invite Belize to participate and to send representatives and any research, any requests, anything that would assist. Because here we're talking about not just sea level rise or global warming, we're talking about flooding. We're talking about things that might change pervasive in terms of where you find pathogens. We found that mosquitoes, which are bearing Zika and all the other plagues, that they are now moving their range based on temperature changes. They're going places they never went before. We're finding that fish are migrating to areas they've never migrated to before based on water temperature changes. And there is sea level rise. I think just looking out there, you can see that it's happening. But we've been recording it at both our marine labs. And we hope to share that with the IPCC. And if there's anything that Belize would like to bring on board, I would be more than happy to find a place for you within it. The increased frequency of natural disasters and extreme weather events linked to climatic change, and much of this we know is because of man-made activities generating greenhouse gases. We term this natural disasters, but they're really not natural enough. They are disasters that we have brought on ourselves. In the Caribbean, the main risks to be confronted, in addition to more intense hurricanes, include sea level rise, seawater intrusion, compromised water resources, degradation of coral reefs, and marine ecosystems. And I'll pause here to remind you that there are many ways we can do adaptation and mitigation. worked with a team from Placentia where they were working on small portions of coral. They call themselves fragments of hope. And Lisa has been able to grow corals in a nursery right off the coast. The end game, of course, is to repopulate where corals have died from bleaching, which is part of the problem with temperature rise. It struck me this morning talking to Dave that here is another possibility for an entrepreneurial development of an innovation. You can do the same thing with mangroves, seagrasses, forests. Instead of taking out coastal resources, we should be restoring. There's actually money to be made in that Guyana has recently signed with the government of Norway an agreement which says you don't take out your forests and we'll pay you to keep your forests. Can you imagine being paid for conservation rather than working for it? You have the largest tracts of forests in the Caribbean outside of Guyana. I think there's a lot that can be gained here. The threat to the region goes beyond natural problems like coral reef bleaching, etc. There's beach and beach erosion, and there's a team from Cavehill I know which comes here every year and measures beach erosion, and their report is that the beaches are eroding at a very fast rate. Leonard Nurse told me that 1.5 kilometers of shore may have been lost over the last 10 years. What does that mean for the people? Well, it means as a people you need to think about what you're doing. What can I do within my small area? Whether it is by actions or by communication, your goal is to try and change how people think. Which is why leadership is not just from the top. There is need for strong leadership from government, from private sector, and from every individual. What do we need leaders to do? We need leaders to take hard economic decisions. We need them to articulate the Caribbean needs and the Caribbean position as a special group in a special area. We need leaders to identify and educate themselves so that they can use the research and data that are available to make the best possible decisions. We need leaders to stand up from amongst those of you who are here. A statement I say quite often to the groups I speak to: when we the able are unwilling, we must say nothing when those who are less able but more willing do. We cannot abdicate our responsibility. We are the ones that need to take it forward. We need leaders to help us set policy, but policy has to be driven by communities. You need to say what you want to happen so that those who you have elected or selected can articulate this. We need leaders to embrace technology and apply it. We need leaders to invest in our human resource at all levels and educate. We need leaders to look at sustainable tourism and sustainable agriculture. We need leaders to move to renewable energy. We need leaders to place gender in mainstream rather than add-on. We need to think of health and wellness as issues that need solving, not issues that need to go away by themselves. We need leaders to accept that there is climate change and work to reduce it in any way possible. Leadership involves establishing a clear vision, sharing that vision with others so they will follow willingly, providing the information, the knowledge, the method, and the realization of that vision so others can continue it. Leaders coordinate and balance the conflicts and the conflict of interest that exists. Leaders make us all stakeholders. I thank you.
Thank you, Professor Weber, for that. The university to Professor Dale Weber